And 3, 2, and we're recording. So welcome, guys. Super special episode today. As you could see by the title of it, I brought my mom in to talk to us. Who better of a wealth of knowledge or source to take on the world than starting with the person who brought me into this world. So a huge reason I wanted to bring my mom on is I believe she has a fascinating story of life. She grew up on a farm and then went to college to become a Parks and Recreation major. Would that be what it's called?
Parks Recreation major. Yeah.
Park and Recreation major. And then went on to help start the convention center in Pittsburgh. And I believe she had probably it's hard to say who was the most important, but, went on to be the sales and marketing director of the convention center. So if anyone wanted to bring something into Pittsburgh, they went through her. And, I even kind of poked her to get some stuff going at some point, but we'll get into that. So without further ado, the lady who brought me into this world, Mom.
Oh, what a pleasure. So thank you, Clayton. Thank you for letting me be a part of your world as you go on to the next step. So it's been fun after all these years and years of education and schooling, and to see what you've been able to do with your life and how you have such a strong vision and commitment to the future. It's exciting.
I appreciate it. Well, so
does it get emotional?
Yeah, start off pretty hot on the emotional roller coaster. Let's start off with before I came into this world. What's it like growing up on a farm? How did a farm shape you into wanting to become a Parks and Recreation major?
Well, it's really kind of those ironic stories. I guess nothing just starts with point A, then point B, and then it happens. There's
right.
A lot of in between that goes on. In high school, there was no question that I had to go on to college. So I grew up in a very strict Christian family. My father, we actually moved to a farm when I was in 7th grade. My mom grew up on a dairy farm and said that she'd never go back to a farm, but she fell in love with your grandfather, and he was an industrial engineer and worked for a major company in a small town in central Pennsylvania, and had a hobby that he always wanted to go back to a farm. Well, growing up on a farm with an industrial engineer, it was always, how can I make it better? Right. My father always kind of was on a tractor doing something, recreating the lane. There was a 1/4-mile lane that went back to our farm. And
what do you mean by connecting your farm to the road?
Yeah, connecting it. So he was always deciding a better way for the lane. Well, once you start pushing off the gravel, you have mud. So it was always a contention in our house of how much mud was in the house. And so growing up in the farm, we were about 7 miles from downtown, and which the town was 10,000 people. So it wasn't all like we have now in a major city. So being in high school, I always wanted to be in with my friends in town to hang out and have fun. So I knew I always wanted to be in town, not out on the farm. And so there was always challenges with my dad, who was strict and wanted us to work on the farm a lot.
Wanted you to help. And
so I had a very strong work ethic to get things done, because that's what you had to do.
Right.
So that
was just a part of life.
Yeah.
It was the only way you could kind of move forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm assuming that's going to be kind of a theme throughout this, but
it might be.
Let's not put the cart before the horse. So farm. So the mud contention, was it just that because I've been there, and it's just a straight piece of land that's between your house and the road. He wanted to get rid of the gravel, and so it just became muddy. And then,
well, there was actually you had to go over a creek, and so there was a small bridge, and so then part of the lane was lower than the other, so he thought he needed to build it up. And so then when you do that, you got to pay to have limestone brought in to put on the top, and that didn't always happen till the spring. So you had mud.
Yeah, and so then just
so much for washing the car.
Right. So do you think that you grew up, I guess you didn't really grow up on a farm, but you were there most of your, is it most of your memories then, or from the farm?
Well, probably like seventh grade. When we were in seventh grade, I had an older sister, a younger brother. We all got to pick our animal that we wanted. My animal was a goat that I got to have. But it was a beef cow farm. They called them gentleman farms.
Okay.
Because he worked from 9 to 5 as an industrial engineer and then came home to feed cows and fix fence posts. And
so he would just go to work, come home, and then just keep working on the farm.
Keep working.
There was no like in between.
No in between.
And I think something that this kind of leads to, and that we talked about, was it was kind of like, I feel like with your parents' generation, maybe not your parents specifically, if it is, say so, but it seemed like they kind of, you know, a part of having a kid was just so that they could be another set of free labor almost.
I think if that was your livelihood, and you grew up on a dairy farm, not the gentleman's farm.
Okay.
For my dad, it was a hobby.
Okay.
You know, that it was work maybe
Right.
to you, but to him, it was a hobby that he loved doing. And, you know, he leased out land for them to harvest it and things, but he enjoyed working outside and being with nature.
Do you feel like he pushed that? Well, that's interesting that you say that, because my next question is going to be, do you feel like he pushed that hobby onto you?
It could be. I don't think my father ever just picked up and hiked through the mountains, though. My major was Parks and Recreation Resource Management. So at the time, in the mid-'70s, you could pick a track, whether it was community leisure, therapeutic, recreation, or resource management. So at 18, I wanted to save the world from the people destroying it.
Oh, that's an inspiring vision.
Yeah, it was.
Something I think everyone, at least most people, can relate to, you know. But so then I guess that's an interesting thing. Like when I think parks and recreation, I mean, I guess when you get down to it, there's a difference between doing parks and recreation and a farm, right? So what were kind of like, I guess, then the class structure of what you did in parks and recreation? I mean, it sounds like you went hiking a lot.
As a major?
Yeah. Was your major to go hiking?
No, I had forestry. So like how to maintain a forestry. There was park maintenance of how to maintain a park. What are the best trash cans to buy? So not only do people use them, but how do you empty them? And then how do you empty them during the day when people are using it in a efficient way? But it's funny you say that. It made me think. One of the things that I always thought was important, whatever you do with all your heart and you go for it and you make it the best. So it hence made me a good worker, very in tune, listening to bosses and getting through school was part of that too. So I was part of the Parks and Recreation Club, and we had a t-shirt design. It was purple with like a white silk screen on it. And it was a picture of a car on a moonlit night with a boy and a girl in the car. And it said, "Let's park and recreate." I came home. My father was livid. Again, I mentioned about being a Christian.
Conservative.
Yeah. He said, "Is that what I'm sending you to college for? Is to park and recreate?" So it was one of those heated moments.
Well, he wanted you to go to college, so be careful what you ask for, right?
Really. And my whole family went to the large Central Pennsylvania college, and
Penn State.
Yeah. And Penn State had a great recreation program, but there was only one other Pennsylvania college, because one of the things, my father was sending me to college, but I had to stay in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Travel wasn't quite, in the 70s, wasn't quite what it is today.
Right.
A whole different story.
Right.
But, I kind of had to smile when you had Kevin Love on one of your episodes earlier, and how he started his career. It's kind of your family does mold you in the environment that you're in. So maybe my dad did mold me a little more than I knew to do outdoor. But I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. The pup.
And there it is.
The pup knew the same thing.
She's on the guard. But let's go back to, what were you saying about park? Oh, there was only 2 Parks and Rec colleges, you were saying, in PA. So did you know that you didn't want to go to Penn State, or did you want to go to the other one?
Oh, well, my grades probably weren't good enough for me to get into Penn State. At the same time, my whole family was going there. I wanted to do something different. I always wanted to be kind of my own person, and I kind of maybe pushed the limits a little bit more than my father would have enjoyed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, there's probably something there where, like you get told to do one thing enough times.
You want to do the opposite.
Yeah, you try to whiplash back and forth.
Yeah.
So then, like we're saying here, so you went for Parks and Rec. Was it a great decision? Did you enjoy, would you do it all over again?
Boy, that's $1 million question. Sure, I had a wonderful career. It's not a normal path of how somebody would get to where I was, but it was great education, and I enjoyed my 4 years.
Well, let's move to that's excellent that you're able to do it. So let's move down. Let's keep moving down the timeline,
okay.
right?
Good.
You then, what happened when you got out of college? And I don't really know what the job market would have looked like for Parks and Rec. Does that involve you signing up for a national forestry? Do you get involved with, just local parks, state parks? Well,
the options were open at the time. Probably hiring professionals in the park and recreation world probably happened in the early 70s. So I was kind of maybe at the end of the bubble. So there were 4-month jobs and 6-month jobs available after I graduated. So you've got to do something else besides just in the summer months working at a campsite. They were U.S. Army Corps of Engineer facilities that I worked at, and it was very hard to get a full-time job.
Right.
They went in GS levels, and so they just weren't available. So I had to find other jobs because it was important to make money. It was important to be successful. And I think what was really important was to continually build your resume, because you didn't want to have a gap that you didn't show that you were excited about working in the world. So
do you feel like that kind of came back to the fact that your dad always wanted you doing something, or was that, do you think it was societal to always never have a gap in your resume?
Oh yeah.
This is societal too. Yeah. They can never just take a break and think about I can see you kind of revolt. Whoever's listening, just kind of pulling back at the thought of that.
Well, some of that is you were at that time 22 years old, and it was time for you to, probably in my case, it was, why didn't you find a husband in college? And you should have been married at this point. And my father would always tell the story of my one neighbor in college. Her father said, we were successful. She graduated with her MRS.
And for who? What does MRS stand for?
For Mrs. She got her Mrs. in college, so she found the man of her dreams in college. Well,
and that's a crazy thing to think about too, because it feels like, my sister went to a school in the South, and it seems like that's still and that's not a taboo thing anymore. Nowadays, to me, that's crazy that, you go to college to find your husband. I mean, it still sounds like that happens in the South to this day, where it's well, I'm just going to college so I can find a successful guy to just, I guess set up with.
It maybe does happen that way, but I think women have come a long way since
I'm
the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, I'm not trying to.
They look for a career too.
Right.
But if you want to have a family, it always helps to have a husband.
Well, and it certainly. I mean, who knows? Scientific engineering is getting pretty advanced nowadays. But regardless, that's interesting that's kind of, and I mean, to your point, there's more pressure, maybe biologically and socially, where women kind of have to figure it out sooner than men do too. Do you feel like that was a thing in your life, or maybe I'm just...
I don't think it was a thing in my life. I never had the pressure to get married.
How about we could view it this way. How do you view that your dad would have treated the idea of marriage with you versus your younger brother?
Well, my father was very traditional. My mother did not work. And she felt her job was to take care of your grandfather. So your grandmother was very much a wonderful homemaker, and she worked in the garden all the time, and just grew wonderful fresh food, and would freeze it and can it and that sort of thing. So I don't think it was ever told that I had to be married to be successful. Okay. I never got that from my father.
Okay. Well, that's
yeah.
I guess that's good for.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get married until I was 32. So, there's a lot between 22 and 32
yeah, for sure.
building my own career, because I was selfish and I wanted it all. And I partly think I wanted to prove to my father that I could be successful with let's park and recreate nature.
Yeah. Well, so let's get back to that then, right? So you're out of college. You've got a park and recreation major.
Right.
You are now, you can only work 4 to 6 months with that major. What else, how did the jobs roll in that you're able to supplement the other, what is that, 6 to 8 months?
I worked in a record store for 2 months during the holiday season. And then the office supply store needed help. And so a small town, everybody talks, and it was like, hey, give Debbie a try. And so I started selling office supply to the lawyers and to the businesses in town. I'd go around with like my sales book. It was before computers. It was before the internet. So I was personal, and I was always, people enjoyed being around Debbie. So it was kind of,
that's for sure.
I always had, like, people would open their doors when I came because I was talking about the weather and how great the day was. And
yeah, I mean, I can see that still today. I mean, you still have the positive, like, optimistic viewpoint. You still go out of your way to help people, more than, anyone else I think I've ever met. And I'm not just saying that because you're my mom, but
thank you.
I mean, out of everyone I've met, everyone kind of has a smile, or they have something to talk about when they come up to you, or, they're always engaged, it seems like, to talk to you. And you think that, and that was probably something that you had before, walking around with your sales book.
Well, and the first thing, whenever this office supply store became available, I was like, I'm not a salesperson. I don't want quotas. I don't want to do numbers. I don't like numbers. I don't want to do that. And it's like, no, you'll be great at it. Do it. And I was great at it, so I did very well. But then May came along and the Parks and Recreation job opened up again. So I went back out to Ohio and did that. Did that for the summer months, and then worked in Youngstown, Ohio at a spa. Decided I did that until Thanksgiving and said, oh, this isn't for me. So I came back home. I don't think I worked then.
You had a gap in your resume?
Oh, you know what? At that point, I realized it was about my resume. I had a very weak resume, and I needed to do something because I really wanted, at that point, to be the cruise director on a ship.
Really?
The recreation cruise. I thought, wouldn't that be fun? Oh my word. It was all about fun.
Yeah, sure. I mean, do what you love, right?
Yeah, do with your, what you enjoy. But then I realized there was only probably like 25 of those jobs available in the whole world.
Yeah.
So that wasn't really realistic. And then I had a friend who worked for the Pirates. And she lived here in Pittsburgh. And I said, well, let me see what I can find. You know what? I need to go to the tourism agency that represents all the hotels and what's going on, and I can figure out then what job title, because it is about a job title. I would imagine even now when you look for a job, it's not as simplistic as cruise director or
I guess it depends, right?
person.
That's an interesting point. I guess it depends. There's probably a couple ways to look at it. The one I guess I am, if you're actively looking for a job, there's like a title that would associate, like, for me, I come out with a computer engineering degree. If I'm looking for a title, it's going to be like software engineer, electrical engineer, But I guess, how old are you at this point in your story?
I would have been like 23, 24.
23, 24. I think there's probably a certain point though, like especially if you're charismatic like yourself, you light up a room, everyone's happy to talk to you, you know, everyone leaves your presence feeling better than when they left. I feel like there's an element where, and just what I've noticed is like people want to, you know, help you and help themselves. So, right. So it's like, I can utilize your positivity in my job. And so I think to what you're getting at in your story is there's an element of like, oh, well, she has just like this mixed bag of information and intelligence. Let's try to create a position for her.
I don't think any job was actually created for me. It was more, I had to adjust when I went in. I mean, back then, I mean, jobs were very strict. I mean, you worked in an office, you worked 9 to 5, you had to dress for it, you had to have a look for it. You know, it wasn't as casual as it is today.
Oh, it's super casual now.
Yeah, very.
So then I guess, well, then let's go back to the story that kind of sent us down here. You were saying, though, that you had a friend with the Pirates, and she was, or when you said job title, was it you trying to figure out what job title you should be like pursuing?
It was, and you know, keep in mind, you know, I think every child wants their parent approval.
Sure.
And so, you know, I'm in the back of my mind and what was being said to me when I was living at home. So those time periods, I was always living at home because I didn't have money to have an apartment or the stability to live on my own. So, Pittsburgh was close to where I grew up. So, I was able to come there in a car, drive. Everything I owned was in the back seat of a car.
Yeah.
And, I was able to volunteer my time. I was collecting unemployment also. So I was able to volunteer my time at the tourism agency and get experience and start to meet people. And one thing kind of led into another. And I'm in sales again, selling the city for meetings and conventions. So it was people, people believed in me. And
so do you think you like brought out that inspiration in people, or was it more like what, like, how do you kind of view that? Right. Like, you know, you kind of first saw sales as not something you wanted to be in. And then it kind of just seems like it kept showing itself to you. Like people just kept saying, oh, you should do this sales. You should do this sales.
I think it's probably being young and not having a lot of confidence. I think when you're young and you have confidence, the world's at your fingertips. Yeah. You know, once you get confidence, like you can tackle anything.
Yeah.
You know,
there's nothing that's impossible.
Nothing's impossible. When you believe in yourself, and then you have people around you that believe in you, they kind of mold you.
It sort of just spreads off. And then you get like that rest. You get the, what is it? They'll like echo back to you because it's like you believe in yourself. So they believe in you for believing in yourself. And so then it sounds like it has kind of that reverberation almost, where then it just amplifies itself.
Yeah, and you know what? You're bringing up a memory. I can remember being at a convention, because if you sell to conventions, you go to conventions a lot. And I can remember a person on a panel saying that he was an influential meeting planner, and he said, I like to do business with my friends, the people I know and I like and I trust. And I sat there thinking, here I am, 25 years old. How do I get to know him? And how does he trust me?
Right.
So I learned how to play golf.
Really? Was he a big golfer?
He wasn't really a big golfer, but the crazy thing is, when you play golf, like people trust you right away.
Really?
Yeah. I
don't think we've ever played golf though together.
Well, you're my son. It's not about, that's not the same. It was like, when you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and are on the links, and you're teamed up with 4 people for the 4 days, and then, not 4 days, the full day.
Right.
And then you're having cocktails and a party at night, and then you see them the rest of the convention, you automatically get friends, like 144 friends.
Right. Just instantly. It's
just instantly. Like really? If you play golf, you're cool.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. I mean, it makes sense, you know, because, and here's something interesting I always thought about with golf, is it seems like it's kind of that game, though, where everyone kind of knows what's going on, right? And it shows your true colors, right? You know, if you kick the ball a little bit, you know, if you're going to count a stroke. Yeah, so is there, like, any situations where you playing golf, you could pick that up off of other people?
I have a person in my mind that it exactly happened.
Please, you want to share?
No, I won't.
You can't keep it ambiguous?
He still lives in Pittsburgh, so I wouldn't say that. But I'm telling you, it's like they would say, if you're a cheater at golf, you're a cheater at life.
Really? I mean, it makes sense. You know, it's one of those things that you you have to accept your flaws almost. And,
you know, and I'm sure you've seen this because I'm not sure exactly how you met Kevin, but when you guys acted like such a good friends, and even though you only knew each other a year, somebody you knew introduced you to him.
Right.
And I think what I'm maybe trying to point out is partly your connections, and that's how you make friends. Because I did play golf, and I became instant friends with these 144 other players because they recognize you from the golf course throughout the convention that you're at. Then it's like, hey, you know, here's Debbie. Have you met her yet? And you all of a sudden are part of the group.
It just keeps opening doors for you, where it's like doors just keep opening in front of you.
Yeah.
So then so if you were at 25, whenever you said to yourself, I'm going to learn golf, right? You know, what was the process with learning golf? And then how did you get to being the sales and marketing director from there?
Well, I can't say golf really did it.
Well, it opened doors for you.
And I wasn't really puzzle. I probably was like, if we're looking at timelines, I might have been like 29, 30 when I actually learned to play golf. I was given really small jobs. I was a housing director it was before computers. So if you were going to a city to attend a convention, you'd send in a reservation form. Somebody had to process that and assign you a hotel for these big conventions that would come in. So I did that. So that way I got to know the hotel business. And so it was kind of like, there's nothing better than learning a business, I believe, than working at the ground floor.
Right.
You know, I think it would have to be very hard to come in as a CEO if you never were in a manufacturing company
like you kind of need to know like how everyone does their jobs. Like how do the laundry people do it? How do the cleaning people do it? What's the bellhop do every single day?
Why do you have check-in at 11 o'clock? I mean, check out at 11 o'clock, but you can't check in until 4 o'clock.
That's actually a great question. Do you know the answer?
Well, you have to clean the room.
Oh. I guess that's a pretty good answer.
So, I mean, it becomes very logic. I mean,
you're just like, oh, yeah, of course.
How many people kind of push the envelope and say, oh, can I stay another hour? You know, my flight isn't until 1 o'clock. I don't want to leave the room until 12, and the hotel wants to be nice. And so
or you get there an hour or two early. It's like, hey, I know I'm early. And then if they're accommodating, so they probably only really need like an hour, right? Because then the 2 hours on the other side of it, what did you say, 11 to 4? So they probably try to clean the room at like 1.
But you only have so many maids.
Right.
Or housekeeping, you know, to do that. So I don't know what the number is these days, but I mean, it used to be, I think, one person in their shift could only clean 10 rooms.
And so, how long would that take?
Well, it all depends on how dirty the room is, but at least an hour.
An hour to clean 10 rooms? Geez, so you gotta have quite a few maids per one hotel.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah. I never realized like it would take 10 rooms an hour. Wow. Because you got to do everything.
No, you're not doing 10 rooms an hour, 10 rooms a shift.
Oh, 10 rooms a shift.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying about 1 per hour, one every 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, so let's not.
It doesn't matter.
But we're getting down the rabbit hole.
No, but I think what you're pointing out is every industry has its little things that you have to understand when you're building a budget and you're working. And so, again, I did a good job at housing, and then I had a boss that said, you're going to do state sales. So I'd go to Harrisburg.
Well, what's state sale?
It was like the Pennsylvania Medical Association, or you have national associations, state associations, and local associations.
Right. Like the Pennsylvania Association of XYZ.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then what is your title and what are you doing at this point? Right. So in my mind, right, you were 25, and then you saw this guy, you were like, all right, I got to learn golf. You don't learn that till 29-ish.
Right.
But when do you have this job, and what is your job?
The state sales, if you're a state association, you just travel really to maybe like 4 or 5 destinations in Pennsylvania that are large enough to take care of you. So it was sales, but it was pretty easy sales because everybody wanted to see you because you're Pittsburgh. You're a great city. They knew it already. There wasn't too much education that I had to do. So
Okay.
I'd call Harrisburg and I'd get a full docket of people to call on very easily.
Well, so who were you working for at this point? Was it a hotel?
No, the tourism agency.
A tourism agency. Was it like the Pittsburgh Tourism Agency?
It was called at the time the Pittsburgh Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Oh, okay. Right. So then the entire organization, the Visitors Bureau, was to get people to visit Pittsburgh and to just drive in tourism.
Spend money.
Gotcha. Spend money in Pittsburgh at a fundamental level was their goal. And so then your job is to go out to the big, let's say, state organizations, which would have been in big cities. I'm assuming like Harrisburg, Philly.
No, just Harrisburg, because they have lobbies. So they go to the state capitol.
Gotcha.
That's where they are.
Gotcha.
There were some in Philadelphia, a lot of medical.
Right. But you didn't really. That was kind of out of your way.
Yeah, we were assigned territories. So Harrisburg was my territory.
Gotcha.
Did that for 2 years, and they said, "You're going to go do Washington D.C." And I said, "Oh no, I'm not. That's major. I mean, that's
so that would have been a big step up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so
I
then
said,
would you?
No.
So then, really?
Yeah. I said I liked my job. They said, "No, you're gone.
You're doing too good for Harrisburg.
You're not doing Harrisburg anymore. Go."
Well, so then you would have been lobbying, let's say, or you would have been trying to sell to lobbyists at a national level,
right?
You would to get to Pittsburgh. So then you said no. You were like, I want to stay with Pittsburgh or Harrisburg at the state level. What influenced you firstly to not want to pursue that?
A pay increase.
They didn't. There was.
There was a big pay increase.
Oh no! But what? Okay, what were the pros and cons? Let's say then.
Well, now you're competing with all the United States.
Did you not want to?
No, that's intimidating. I didn't have the confidence. It goes back to I didn't have all that, and then
there's a level. It was just like a level of confidence difference, right?
And it was much harder to get appointments because back then, I mean, I'd like to think now people know that Pittsburgh is a wonderful city to visit and it's gorgeous. Back then, they still thought it was kind of smoky and still all it was here was still.
It might still be. It might still have that because there have been times where I've talked to people and they're like, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm from Pittsburgh. And they're like, oh yeah, I visited there. Like, it's so cool. Like I didn't really expect it to be what it was. Like, so I think there might still be some of that stigma that it's like, this smoky, and there's definitely like the pillars in the town to prove it, where you see that like the back half of them are still covered in ash and a lot of character on them. Yeah. So then, how did your boss react? Let's get back to your story. No, with the Pittsburgh plug. Visit Pittsburgh. Visit Pittsburgh. Visit Pittsburgh. Visit Pittsburgh. So how did your boss react when you were like, "Nah, I'm good"?
I think it was really simple. He just said, "Sorry, there's no discussion. You're going." And
so then
I did it.
Oh, so you did go. Oh, okay. And then how did that play out?
Well, that's where it became harder, and I had to work really hard to get in, but it would be meeting people like in casual settings and having other people introduce you, and that's where the golf came in then. Gotcha.
Okay, so let's get back to the timeline. Yeah. At this point, you're 29 then?
Yeah.
You're about 29.
Yeah.
And your job is to be the national liaison for the Pittsburgh Visitors Bureau?
National sales director.
The national sales director for the Pittsburgh Visitors Bureau. And so then you are now going to Washington, D.C.
Right.
How often? Once a week? Every day?
Once a month.
Once a month? And so then you have to create all these connections. Was it mostly you emailing people, or was emailing even a thing? Sorry.
No.
Not to date yourself.
No, you still had letters, and you still had letters. You had to type letters and carbons and things like that. So,
real quick, what's a carbon?
Oh, you want a copy of the letter.
Oh.
So you put carbon paper. Oh, Clayton, I can't believe you don't know. When you would type
I've heard the
phrase
letter, carbon copy, but I don't.
Yeah. You put a piece of carbon paper. Do you know what carbon paper is?
No. Would it make like an imprint or a mold of it?
Yeah.
Really?
And it would print. So it was, sorry, carbon people, I don't know exactly, but it was either blue or black, and it was just solid. So when the typewriter key would hit it, it would imprint on the paper that was behind it.
Really?
Yeah, so it was important because that was before maybe electric typewriters too. Electric typewriters probably were there in the late 80s. Yeah, there would have been that there.
The electric typewriter was in the 80s.
Do you think everyone's hearing?
Yeah, they are. No,
yeah?
they're definitely
Sorry.
hearing her.
Yeah.
So she's like dead and not even moving. You guys can see her on YouTube. It's not even like nothing's even happening, but she has to bark.
She probably looks like a leopard.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
She should be good. So carbon copy, that's where that kind of came from.
Yeah.
Was that actually like you would put a piece of paper,
carbon paper, yeah.
You put carbon paper behind the paper to make a copy of it. Now, what would you do with that carbon paper?
Put it in a file. So the file would say the Pennsylvania Association of XYZ, and that way you would keep record of what you did.
So now my understanding of carbon, though, is it's like a black. So, but you're saying it was black or blue.
Yeah, it would be on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So, the whole thing would have had that, so it could make the imprint.
But it would just be an imprint then. So was it hard to read?
No, because it went on onion skin paper.
What is onion skin paper?
I don't know if it really matters, but you would have like a nice linen piece of paper that you'd write your letter on, type your letter on. Okay. Because we had secretaries back then, right? So secretaries did all the typing. Secretaries would do that. And the onion skin was just the paper that you can hold up and see through. Okay. And so it's a real thin piece of paper. So the black or the blue would really stick out.
So it's kind of like the paper was used as like a lens to see. Yeah. That's interesting.
But it would only last maybe like 10 years. But it didn't matter after that. I mean, that was old news. Yeah.
Well, so let's get back.
Yeah.
So much for the carbon. So that's carbon copy. That's why the word carbon copy is a thing. Okay. So where were we at in the timeline? 25. You were like, I got to play golf.
I'm in DC because I got to have new customers all the time.
Well, this is 29. You're learning golf at 29.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let me see here. What I did before then is I met somebody who said that there was a bowling league on the last Tuesday of every month. And I go, really? And it's like of all the meeting planners in DC and most of them were single at the time. And of course, at the time I was too. So
sure.
I said, oh, can I come? And so I was the only kind of out of towner that wanted to bowl with them all. Right. So again, it was meeting someone on a casual basis to do business with them in the future. So and now here's what I'm interested about, right? Where's the level of like being genuine, right? Like you genuinely want to get to know these people, but then where's the line between like, being genuine? Like I genuinely want to get to know them. I genuinely want to play bowl. I would genuinely want to bowl. I, genuinely want to get in there versus, well, I'm just doing this for me to get a leg up to make money. Well, I think that's where they realize, do you honestly believe in what you're selling?
Yeah.
You in sales, nothing would be harder if you did not believe in your product. Right. You've really got to believe in your product.
So you truly believe Pittsburgh was something everyone needed to, a place everywhere, and everyone needs to come and visit. Mm-hmm. You truly loved it, or still love it as much?
Oh, I still love it as much. I mean, I still live here, and I got the brainwashing.
You got brainwashed.
You got brainwashing. You love the city.
I mean, I still see 412 everywhere I go. Yeah. The numbers just appear. I was talking about that in my second episode. Which is going to air. I mean, people aren't going to really know, but they'll have heard it before. So, I talked about 412 a lot in episode 2. And so, that's pretty interesting how, you bring in like the corollaries of like, I see it everywhere kind of now.
Well, you know what? And I think that's sometimes what professional sports do. It brings out a city pride.
Yeah. Well, it's even more so, I think, in Pittsburgh than anywhere else.
Well, because it's an older city. And, the population was much bigger 50 years ago than what it is today. So there's a lot of grandparents throughout the country that send that Spirit Nation or the Steeler Nation.
Well, that's the funny thing is if I meet someone, I'm like, I'm from Pittsburgh, or at least they know I'm a Steelers fan.
Yeah.
It's, oh, I'm a Steelers fan too. It's like, are you from there? They're like, no. I'm like, well, was your dad from there? And they're like, yeah.
Yeah. Or grandma.
Yeah. It's like, yeah,
With
just
Terry
kind of,
Bradshaws and
you just kind of, there's something, there's some, I don't know if they put something in the water here, or like something has to be that there's like this pride that comes around being from Pittsburgh and a part of Pittsburgh.
Well, the first winning all the Super Bowls that they did. So,
it certainly helps.
I know the Patriots are there as a challenge.
I'm going to have to mute that.
Okay, sorry.
Bleep.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's fascinating.
So I think probably the bowling had me realize it, then the golf, and hearing the people talk about, that people want to do business with people they know and trust, which as I say that is, I think how hard it must be now. I mean, I'm retired now. So, how do you sell now without using the computer?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, it's kind of difficult, right? Because so many everywhere. It's like, and there's actually a comedian that has a funny bit about this. It's like, it's no longer you're going to company X. It's like, no, you're going to company X so you can support hungry kids in need. It's like there's kind of like always a story, or you're supporting something else. It's not about the product you're buying. It's the fact that you're helping like these kids. It's like they almost, and it's not everyone, don't get me wrong, but it seems like a huge, it's like, how are we giving back? It's like, that's what people want nowadays. That's like such a huge driving thing. And I mean, it comes back to the spirit that you kind of had with like wanting to make a difference. And I believe it's in the right place, but I think that, has a huge element to it now with sales and selling.
Well, hats off to them that they're finding a way to get somebody to pay attention to their product a little more. I think with the amount of information that we're all given, it's really tough to figure out what is truthful and not,
That's evident this whole last, 10 years. I mean, the internet really, I think we started that ball, but I think in the last like 5-10 years, it seems like it's amplified that. I mean, from your perspective too, like how, I'm coming from my generation, but, based on your generation kind of coming through it, like, how is that, like, it's kind of hard to ask you your perception on it because you only have your perception.
Well, I think what I'm amazed about, and even when we've been driving around, you're quick to put in your GPS. I told you about being a salesperson. Well, I'd either take the subway in DC or the metro, or I would rent a car because things were in the district, but they were all in Fairfax, or they were in Arlington or Alexandria. So I had to get around. There was no entering in an address to say at 11 o'clock, I'm in Alexandria. I need enough time to get to Fairfax by 1 o'clock for a lunch, so you had to look at an old fashioned map that you'd get at the AAA store, and you'd measure how far it was. And then it would say, all right, that's 20 miles. All right, I probably could go 30 miles an hour, or whatever. And you'd figure out on your own. You have so many things right in your fingertips, right in that telephone of yours that.
Well, I even remember when I was a kid. So I would have been like under the age of 10. We would look up MapQuest and then print out the directions on a piece of paper because it wasn't even.
Well, MapQuest was before.
But that's my point. Is like even then, I remember the difficulty we had. So I can only imagine. What, how is that kind of? You kind of have like a mental. Did you just become really good at figuring out timing, or were you always super early? How did that kind of play a role?
Well, that's before cell phones too. So if you were running super early, you had to find a phone booth. And you had, I always had a lot of, it originally was a dime and then it went up to a quarter. I had a lot of quarters in my pocket because I had to call and say, look, I'm running early. What's your schedule like? Or it was also part of the conversation. I would write it in my notes, they have an appointment an hour before me or an hour after me. So how much time do I have? To
meet up with people.
And then if you were in a good appointment, how do you get out of that appointment to get there on time? So, I mean,
there was just a whole bunch.
It's the day in the life of sales. It was a lot more complicated because you had to look at a map. There was no one on GPS saying, all right, at the red light, turn right.
Well, even more so now, you can just do a video call with it all. So it makes it even more just kind of,
I would write down, like, just as I would, if I got the appointment, I would write the directions from where I was beforehand.
Okay.
But then you're stacking it, so then all of a sudden 2 days later, you talk to somebody who lives close and you want to try to get them at the same time.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know how we're on this, but
it's talking about the internet and how. Yeah. No, I was just curious your perception of the internet. It's fascinating that. Well, I mean, that's how it relates to your job, and
there's
GPS.
More information in there than you can ever imagine. Make life easier.
Yeah, we didn't even need that much information to get to the moon.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, you would think that's just a straight shot, but
well, don't they say there's more computer bits in your phone than what took you to the moon?
Right, and that's just like, the process. It might have been like 5 megabytes or something like that of what they used to get to the moon.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, if you have 5 you're not doing anything with 5 megabytes. Like, I don't even know. Some pictures you can't even have 5 megabytes.
Doesn't that scare you? What is your thought on that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't really know what to make of it. I mean, right now we're going through a semiconductor shortage. I'm not sure if that's like wrapping itself up, but that could be a huge pain point. I mean, it's good for me when I sold my car. It like increased the value of it pretty substantially, but
Someday you're going to buy a new car.
Yeah, maybe someday. Yeah, we'll see. Plane first.
Okay. Okay.
But no, to your point, I mean, it's like there's just other problems that then arise. Now we have to worry about semiconductors, like going on a shortage, and there's like the idea of Moore's law, which is like everything's going to double every year to year and a half. But we're hitting a certain point, I think, where you're not able to fit enough bits like in a certain surface area, because like a huge advantageous is being able to get the bits really close. I might be going over your head right now.
You could see it in my eyes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
We're running. There's not enough space between atoms is essentially what it comes down to. Yeah. For them to collide. But
okay.
It's all about it. Let's get back to your timeline. We might have gone down a rabbit hole there, but no, it really relates your experience with sales into what people go through today with the internet,
And I think what's kind of crazy about it, I mean, here we are, 2021, but I mean, this is back in, 1990.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, the internet I think they would have just written the first code for the internet in the 90s.
I think it was in 90.
The 80s?
I came back from a convention and I said to our financial person, I said, Sandy, you're not going to believe this. I just found the most wonderful thing and we've got to buy it. It's just phenomenal. It's going to save you so much money that you won't have to overnight packages anymore. It's called the facsimile. And she's like, what? And I go, you can put this piece of paper down. You can.
It was a fax machine.
It was a fax machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
You had to do that. So, I mean, does anyone fax anymore at all?
No, I don't think so. You can scan documents, maybe. That'd be the use of it.
I think it used to not be considered legal.
Really?
Yeah.
Why was it illegal?
Because you could maybe manipulate it, you could
like alter text and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so therefore they didn't accept it as like legal.
Right.
That's interesting. I never knew that. That's amazing. Well, we digress, right?
Yeah. Modern technology.
All right, let's go back. Let's summarize where we're at in your timeline. 7th grade, you moved to a farm.
Oh, okay.
Let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
7th grade, you moved to a farm. You then realize you're going to go to college for Parks and Recreation. You can't work it every hour of the day, so then or every day of the year. Half the time you're at Parks and Rec, half the time you're finding sales position. You then find a sales position, and by the age of 29, you're the national director of sales for the Pittsburgh Visitors Bureau. You're going to bowling leagues. You're teaching yourself golf in the name of selling Pittsburgh to people, which is pretty crazy to think about. That's like a pretty,
It's fun.
Yeah, you enjoyed it?
That was fun.
You enjoyed every minute of it?
Every minute.
So now, where's the transition from national sales director of the Visitors Bureau to the sales director of the convention center?
Well, I fell in love and got married and then had 3 kids, and it became very difficult to travel.
I was one of them, by the way.
Yeah. And so it was, I needed to find more hours in the day to be at home and not travel as much.
Well, Well, I appreciate you for making that sacrifice, first of all.
That's not a sacrifice.
Oh.
It was a way to continue with my career, but just not do it out of town.
Stay in town. And do
Stay
that.
in town.
So did you feel like, I mean, obviously sales is the same, but what were like some big differences maybe that you saw between the national sales director and then being the Pittsburgh Convention Center sales director?
Well, you're actually responsible for making the event happen. So there's a little more pressure there.
So it's not just making the sale; you kind of have to do all the operations in between.
Well, it was you were the one that sold it and promised things. So you worked very closely. There was a convention service department in a convention center, also operations, which are amazing people, and they make sure that whatever vision a meeting planner has for big events, that they happen, because not all of them are the same. And to achieve their goals, there's different ways of learning when you're an adult, and whether you have a trade show or whether you have elephants coming in, or whether or not you have the President of the United States coming in, it's a major undertaking. And maybe kind of like how we talked about the maids, sometimes it's all hands on deck, because it needs people to help direct the 5,000 people that are in the building.
Make sure everyone's on the same page and everyone's doing what needs to be done.
I mean, we've all been in situations where you're walking with a large group of people around you and you don't know where to go.
Right.
So you want to make the experience as wonderful as possible.
Right, because you'd give tours of the convention center then too. You would be taking people like, all right, this is this area, this is that area.
When I worked for the Tourism Bureau, you didn't get down to those nitty gritties of like, there's a general session for 5,000 people, or you just knew it overall. You didn't really know what day or anything. You were just selling the concept and the idea.
Right.
This is actually selling the space itself.
Okay.
So
that's cool.
It was cool.
Yeah.
It was cool. It was a brand new convention center, and it was gorgeous, and it is gorgeous today still. And it was part of the LEED movement. So with U.S. Green Building Council.
Okay. All right, because you had like the G20. Oh, and then the G20 summit was actually at the convention center. Yeah. Did you have, I mean, I guess you had a big role in making that happen.
I did. I worked with the State Department, but at that level, I mean, you bring the GM in. So, you know, it's everybody, again, that's kind of on deck to make it happen and show the commitment that we could handle the leaders of the world to come into little old Pittsburgh.
Right. Which is pretty crazy in itself to have the leaders of the world came to Pittsburgh at that point. And then I know there was also where Major League Baseball decided to bring the All-Star game to Pittsburgh.
94.
In 94. Mm-hmm. So you would have, was it 94?
1994.
Was there another one that I'm thinking of?
There was another one in 06, I believe.
06. Right, because 94, would you have been at the convention center in 94?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you were there for both of them.
Yeah, I worked with Major League Baseball and bringing what was called Fan Fest. Fan Fest had maybe only happened a handful of times before that.
Oh, right. And that became like a yearly thing, right? Where it was pretty cool. As a kid, she did a good job with that, where was like, you know, you would go, and Fan Fest was like basically a huge Pirates promotion piece where you would go, they would have like batting cages. There would be, I remember there was like an announcer kind of thing where they'd videotape you announcing like a play-by-play, and then they give you a VHS. I remember they give you like a VHS thing, and then you see some of the Pirates players walking around and all that stuff. Yeah. I remember that. That was cool. We'd always take our friends there. And, yeah. So then with the All-Star game, did you like what all with the convention center? Did you guys have a hand in making it come to Pittsburgh, or was it?
Well, we did, because, you know, they wanted to do Fan Fest. So a portion of that, I mean, that's where it really does take a whole community, because you got to have the hotels, right? Because you got to have enough hotels for people to sleep overnight. And so the hotels have to be on board and excited for it. You've got to have a facility that is large enough to hold what Major League Baseball wants to do in there. So they're the ones that are deciding the announcer video that you said, and what type of technology is needed to make that happen. And does your building have it? So there's all that little nitty gritty to figure out. Of course, the Pirates had to want to host it, because, you know, that's of course when you had home Home Run Derby. Yeah.
Home Run Derby.
Home Run Derby.
Which we went to. Yeah.
Home Run Derby and the All-Star Game itself. So there's a lot of components that the city has to do to make it successful. So it's like checking a box to make sure that a city has it. So.
And that kind of ties into what we talked about with Kevin Love, where it's like all these little things need to kind of come together that then like you see it on display for, you know, you just see the baseball game or you just see the home run derby, but you don't realize how many little, and we were even talking about this with the maids. It's like you don't realize how many little things need to happen under the covers to make this 2-hour production, or this, you know, the home run derby 2 hours and then the game 3-hour productions, you know?
Well, even kind of crazy. Were you here in town when Bassmasters were here?
I want to say yes.
And they were fishing on the Three Rivers, and we called it like Bass Fest. You know, the convention center was kind of turned into the same thing as like baseball, but only for fishermen instead. And then the arena, at the time it was the Civic Arena, PPG wasn't built yet, was where the weigh-in was. So it had to be able to allow trucks to come in and with their fish and have a large amount of people watch and celebrate the catching of fish.
And then just have, which is pretty crazy to me because the Three Rivers aren't the cleanest rivers in the world.
No, but they are enough to have bass.
Oh, I guess so. I guess I didn't even know
they've come a long way.
Yeah, they clean them up quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because I remember, did the convention center have anything? Or did you have anything to do with that?
Cleaning the rivers?
Well, I just knew you,
Nope,
not literally, I guess, but I knew you did a lot of like green work with the convention center. There was like the green operative, the G1.
G1. Green First.
Green First.
We, let me think here. It was called the Recycling Council, the National Recycling Council. We hosted their convention, and part of that was, you know, what did you do with your waste? And all of that was really important. And it was through that idea that we said, you know, we do so much that's green at the convention center. We should call it something. You know, everyone goes with the acronyms, especially in the convention world. But I think you also do it in business too. So G1 seemed to make sense.
That's what just flew off the tongue.
Yeah, Green First.
And so I'm thinking about it now more too, is like, this is where it probably came in your Parks and Recreation, background, because then,
excuse me. Okay. I think so.
Yeah. You good?
Yeah.
We can take
Thank
a break.
you.
Yeah.
No, we're good.
We can pause it.
We're good.
Just kidding. We're still going. Where were we? Your Parks and Rec come back in.
Oh, yeah.
Because you also were, you know, the way I remember is the G1, and the other thing would have been the Monarch Butterflies.
Mm-hmm.
And
you were a volunteer.
I was a volunteer.
You helped.
Yeah.
That was with the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy, which is wonderful. They were very supportive, and we had planning boxes on top of the convention center. And it's like everything we do is to put green first. And so we had these planning boxes, and at the time it was coming out how the monarchs were becoming extinct because they were losing their habitat. In Texas with wildfires, they couldn't come there because, if you don't know, monarchs hibernate in Mexico. I mean, there's one forest which would be wonderful.
Can you go through the whole pattern of like where the forest they're at in Mexico, because they migrate quite a bit, right?
Right, they go all the way up to Canada. So they spend their winters in Mexico, and then they start the migration of going through Texas. So you've got to get through Texas before you kind of get up through the north, and you go as far as in Canada, and then they loop around and come back. Like right now, you'd be seeing them in Pennsylvania.
In September.
And August and September is about the time, because they're working their way back to Mexico and this one forest. So it's one of those wonderful things that nature does.
And it just keeps like kind of doing
in the cycle. And so with the numbers depleting, it's important that every one of those little butterflies, because here's the crazy thing. The butterfly that started in Texas, it's like the 6th generation that comes back.
Really? So they go through 6, and that's all within a year span?
Yeah.
So within a year, they go through 6 generations of monarchs.
Oh, there might even be more than that.
Really?
Yeah. We could always Google it and find out. But
wow.
Now I'm forgetting kind of how many generations it is. But it's more than You can imagine, but so that's just it. It's not uncommon. Maybe the salmon, the same thing. I mean, it's that butterfly only lives maybe a couple weeks before it lays eggs and becomes a caterpillar and starts its journey all the way back.
Well, I don't want to make too many clicking sounds, but yeah, I think that's pretty crazy. Because then I know
you can update them on the next episode.
Yeah, we'll give them. Here's the monarch butterfly. They go through 4 stages during one cycle, four generations in 1 year.
4 generations, okay.
According to monarchcommunities.com. So we'll just assume that they're right. So they go through 4 generations in 1 year, 4 stages, and then there's 4 stages of the monarch butterfly life cycle, which is egg, larvae, aka caterpillar, which looks like a green guy, and then a pupa.
Well, yeah, and what was important in our planning boxes is that we wanted to attract the butterfly there to lay their eggs, because the only food that the caterpillar will eat will be milkweed. And so that's why milkweed is so important.
So then on the top of the convention center, you just had all these planter boxes of milkweed?
Milkweed, and then special flowers for the butterfly to be attracted to.
Okay.
But we even looked at, is there a danger to bring butterflies into a downtown location? I mean, we don't want something to happen to them because we attracted them there.
Right. But, you have to but it was
all
good.
The naturalists were good about it.
Everyone was okay.
Yeah,
everyone
they was like, okay, the butterflies can come to the city. So, so pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
So we were a part of that. And then the neat thing is our plants, we put an irrigation system in because it's very hot on top of the convention center roof. We took some of the plants and then put them over in the Keys Rocks.
Oh, really?
So their community organization accepted that. So, it gave them kind of a path to go down the Ohio River that they can even go farther.
I mean, I don't know if you're seeing it, but I'm seeing a little bit of industrial engineering coming through with all this.
I think it's when you come home and you'd say, Mom, where did you put the peanut butter? I found a better location for it.
Oh my gosh, that drove me crazy as a kid.
Yeah, I know. I always found a better place for it.
No, the place that I don't know.
That came from my father.
Yeah. It's like, at least just tell me where. We got past that. We made it past that.
Okay, good.
That issue in our relationship.
Okay.
Yeah. We know to tell each other where we're putting stuff in.
Yeah.
I think, right?
If not, you ask.
Yeah, because searching for things was never really my specialty. No.
Mm.
Well, we don't have to. I'm sure people aren't too interested in all that. But yeah, so I mean, we pretty much made it all the way through your life. I guess here's one question I have for you that I've never asked you. What's it like being a mom? Like, sorry to get graphic for some people, but we had a pretty intimate relationship. The fact that I kind of was grown in you for 9 months.
I'd say that's intimate, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty personal, That's something I will never experience having. So have you ever tried to explain, could you try to explain what that's even like to a guy or to anybody?
It's so funny. I was pregnant and doing a site inspection of the city, and there was an emergency doctor from UPMC that was part of the emergency physicians, doesn't matter. He said to me, what is it like to be pregnant? Is it painful to have babies? And I go, you're a doctor, don't you know? And he said, he goes, I don't know. And I go, I would imagine it's more painful to get shot than to have a baby. And he goes, no, getting shot doesn't hurt at all. He goes, because he said it cuts off the nerves, so there is a pain, but it's one of those pains that it's having a baby is so blissful you forget the pain.
And what pain are we talking? The entire process, like from?
Oh no, I was talking about birth itself. Are you asking about birth? No.
I was starting a little bit before that.
Okay, no,
I know that's painful. I can see it on the face.
Okay.
I just meant the mental.
Yeah.
I'm curious about more like the mental thought process of another person is growing inside of me right now.
I think it doesn't come to life until you feel the baby move.
Until he starts pushing his arms.
And they start moving their arms. They kick. they stretch their arms. When you're farther along in your pregnancy, you can even see like the arm move on your belly. You know, you can say, "Oh, look, there's a foot." You know, to do that. Like and so I always kind of pictured it more as like an alien. You know,
really?
I thought this is like an alien growing inside you.
Well, there's certainly enough movies where they have like aliens coming out of the stomach.
My girlfriend thought she was pregnant with a baseball. You know, she is what she said. She'd have dreams, and it was like when she delivered, she thought it was going to come out of baseball. You
really?
know? Yeah.
Is that like a fear? Or?
I don't know. I think it's just kind of what it feels like. Maybe
it just feels like you have a baseball kind of in your stomach.
Yeah, for me, it was a little bit more. You were pretty big when you were born. So, you know, near the end of the pregnancy, I mean, your legs swell. So you've had probably that experience when you're there. You put on additional 50 pounds and everything's just a little bit harder. You can't tie your shoes.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean.
You need help for things.
You need
getting
help
around.
For things.
Yeah.
I can remember being in a department store, and usually when you want to get through a tight space, you turn sideways to get through. Right. I can remember doing that, but I was so much wider than that I couldn't get through.
You couldn't even.
That hindered my shopping. You know?
So is that what this has been the last? You try to make up for it?
Oh, maybe. Oh, you mean because I shop now?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I feel like every time I come home, you're always like, "Hey, you want to go shopping?" Like. I was thinking about how that story you told me about the guy. Like, first of all, what was your like relationship like with him?
Oh, he would sit. I was the driver, and he would sit in the front seat, and we were going around to different hotels. So that's when I worked for the tourism bureau. That his convention would just fit in a hotel. So I was kind of the driver to make sure he got to the hotels that he was supposed to see. So,
gotcha.
What happened a lot of times is the person would say, you know, what do you think? Do you think this would work? You know, and they, you know, go through what their objections are. So as a good salesperson, I was always overcoming what objections they might have. Gotcha.
Well, so the reason I was going to go back to him and bring it up was I find it interesting. Like, that's a question that I've only ever asked you that. Like, I don't really ever plan to ask, you know, another person, like, what's it like being pregnant? You know, so
you'll ask your wife someday.
Yeah, probably. Maybe, I guess. You know,
I hope so.
I'm sure it'll come back up.
So. Yeah.
But the point I guess I was trying to get at is, how about this? Were you asked that a lot? Because to me, that story kind of is almost a testament to you being like an open kind of, you know, there's almost a non-judgmental person of conversation, right? Anyone can kind of come to you and just say whatever's on their mind and ask you whatever's on your mind, and you're willing to explain to them.
Probably because all of a sudden, not only are you a female, but now you're a mother.
Right.
You know, and so I think, you hope everyone trusts their mother, right?
Well, I mean, you know, you hope, right? But I think it's difficult. I've certainly seen my fair share of, let's say, parents in general, mothers. I mean, you know, I think there's a level of, I believe everybody wants the best for like their kids or whatnot, but you know, there's a level of, it's hard for people to do that. I mean, you know, I remember when I was a kid, there was at least points where you would ask me things I didn't want to tell you the honest answer about, because I didn't want to hear because remember that the hoodie that I got in Italy, that there was even a picture of me getting, and so what happened was me and my friends, we went to Italy in 9th grade. We a couple of us bought these Italy zipper up hoodies, and I know that hindsight, I know that I left it on like the boat between Italy and Greece, and then when I got home, my friend's mom was like, oh, like something about my hoodie, or bringing up my hoodie. And my mom was like, well, I don't think Clayton brought home a hoodie. I don't think he bought one. She's like, no, he did. And then they found a picture. And I think I even went to the extent of lying that I was borrowing someone else's.
Yeah, you didn't tell me the truth because you didn't want me to know that you lost it.
Yeah, I didn't want to hear you wasted money. Why are you so reckless with money? So it was easier for me to just say, no.
Is that an emotional scar of some kind, you think?
It wasn't I guess to go full circle with it, I was trying to just lay out that, you know, the trusting their mother. It's like, you know, I know at the root of everything, you want the best for me, right? But at some level, it's like, well, I didn't want to hear it again. So it was easier for me to lie about this hoodie as opposed to being honest and being told again, like the value of money, the fact that I was irresponsible. It's like, I just don't want to hear that. I know what you're going to say.
Maybe you didn't want to disappoint me.
Well, for sure. I mean, that goes back to what even you were saying.
Yeah.
Kids don't want to I don't want to disappoint your parents. Like, you guys sacrificed a lot. You sacrificed a job, and, and I guess you don't see it as that, but you at least took a step back, I believe. It sounds like, in your professional career to have me and to start a family. So, I mean, obviously I'm looking at it very conscientiously now, but as a kid, I mean, I think that's just you kind of understand it, but you don't fully grasp it at a certain point.
I think children are pretty self-centered.
Well, I mean, we have to be kind of like, we're very,
for survival, maybe.
It takes us 18 years in theory, at least 16 years to kind of know better. And even then you think you know everything. And that's probably the worst thing, maybe not the worst thing, but it definitely kind of sets you back a little bit. Like, because, you still think you know everything, but then you start realizing you don't. And then that's where I think you start hitting that point of like, oh,
probably right.
Yeah. There was I know a buddy of mine was telling me a story about a high school teacher he had who he always would say he never thought he knew as much as he knew when he was 18. Let me see if I can remember that right. He never thought he was as smart as he was when he was 18. And it's like, oh shit, you're right. Like, you constantly learn more about things and realize.
But I think as you do get older, you realize there's so much you don't know.
Right.
When you know it all, when
right.
you're 16. When you're 16,
right.
you know it all.
And so I'd agree with you, right? There's a childish element of thinking you know it all. And therefore if you know everything, then you're God's gift to earth, right? And therefore everything should just warp to your will, So I guess there is probably an element of being selfishness is a childish act, but is that kind of what you're saying, or am I missing it a bit?
You know what I'm also thinking, and maybe you even have a perspective of, if you're this selfish, why aren't you confident when you're young?
That's interesting. What do you think, the selfish kids are confident? Or, because I feel like I was kind of a more quiet kid.
You were.
Yeah, and I think I lacked a lot of confidence. So I think the know-it-alls have maybe too much, because everything in life is about balance. They have too much
confidence. So maybe it was just the kids I had.
Right? Yeah. And I mean, I was definitely confident in my abilities at some level, but, like we've talked about with the traumas I've gone through, other people do a good job of taking their insecurities out on you. And it has that it can have that negative effect on you if you don't really know who you are.
Sure. Maybe when you turn 18, you start going out in the world more, whether you go to college or you stay in your hometown and get a job or whatever, that you start to realize you don't know it all. Right. Which brings in a lower set of confidence. Then you have to build it back up again.
Right. And what I'm thinking about now, and this kind of leads credence, I think, to, I want to kind of use alcohol as an example where, you're told not to do something and it's like, well, why? And it's like, well, it's illegal. It's like, well, why? And at a certain point as a parent, you just don't want to answer the, well, why question anymore. So do you what am I trying to get at? If you look at European cultures, they don't really have a drinking age. It's just if you want to drink, you can have a drink, and I see the parallel where in America, it seems like there's there is a drinking issue we have here where it's, the binge drinking, let's say, at least, where it's just pound drinks. You go out to the bar, you want to, take 5 shots before you go out. That doesn't happen in other cultures. Where am I trying to get at here? It's it's almost like how we relate this back to kids, where you're kind of pushing back against what you're told to do. I mean, and I think we crossed this bridge, but I did sneak some drinks whenever I was a kid. I'm sure you're aware of that by now. Or have we not crossed that?
Not my angel.
Not
my angel.
I never mind. Just kidding. That was a joke. But there's a point of if you're telling them not to do it and you're not cultivating a open environment of expressing yourself, can it not have that pushback effect?
Well, I think it's maybe what you're touching on is defiance, because you know it all already. So why do you need a parent to tell you something different? Right.
And so then how do we blend this in? Where's the connection there between, right? Because once I hit 18, I go off to college, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
I have no parents to come home to. I can literally do whatever I want. So then I think, and this is me being logical without a kid, it's like, well, where's that line between letting kids decide things for themselves at a young age versus, well, you know everything until you let them go.
When you look at maybe pictures of brain development, I mean, as I think they even talk that you can't safely cross the street by yourself until you're 12 years old.
Okay.
And so, but this probably.
But what's that based on? But what's that based on?
That's on all your senses and your brain development.
Okay.
To say how you can judge space. Is that car really stopping? How fast is it going? And how fast do I have to go across the street to make it happen? Well, when you look at the difference, they say, of male and female brain development, a female's brain develops faster than a male's.
Right.
And they explain that by not until the age of like 25 is a male's brain completely developed. So it is that maybe understanding your limits and understanding maybe the drinking situation as when the binge drinking.
Right. So I guess so then is the argument that the drinking age should be 25? Or,
I have said that to police, like, because there were a lot of fraternity order of police that would come through the building and talk to them. And they kind of laughed at me, Yeah, I mean, it's no. And it really is because of the brain development. And it's because you don't make good judgments to do that. And not that you're 30 and don't make good judgment also, but your odds of having a younger body and maybe age 18 and being allowed to drink is just a danger situation waiting to happen.
Right. And I guess then my next corollary though is that doesn't binge drinking almost, you're going to the extreme, right? As opposed to finding a balance, where I feel like if you're a kid, let's say 10, 11, 12, you want to have a drink, it's like, all right, you can try it, right? Like, and I guess I'm kind of asking this because this is how, at this point in time, I would raise my kids, right? Like, this is how I would see it, is like, all right, like, societally speaking, you're not allowed to, but when you're here, like, we'll let you, you got to take it easy. We'll like talk about how you're feeling, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, versus just, all right, you're 18, go do it. Like, because then I feel like you're not cultivating. It's like, who does that kid turn to for questions? If they have questions about alcohol, if they have questions about the way it makes you feel, if they have questions about the way you think whenever you do it, the way you act whenever you do it. And then not to mention it also, I believe, and again, the ages 18 to 20, you're still technically illegal, but you're in college, so you're going to be around it. It's like, I remember going out before you go out to the bar, it's like, well, let's take 4 shots because we're not going to be able to drink when we get there. It's like that. Like, first of all, that like intuitive, like you're almost like pushing a lot more on yourself. Like, does it kind of make sense what I'm saying? Like, you're not mellowing it out through the night. It's just go hard, go hard, go hard. And so when it hits your liver, it's going to hit all of it at the same time.
Well, I think what I'm listening to you say, I think maybe the educational process has done a good job of reducing smoking.
Okay.
So, to do that, I'd say the educational process has not done well to reduce binge drinking. We'll call that binge drinking because, alcohol is alcohol. But I think what happens is maybe that false confidence comes when you take those 4 shots before you go out to a bar, because bars have a different appeal or status than maybe just drinking at home with your parents.
Well, it's a social status for sure at bars, right? There's a social element of like, which is interesting, right? You see all like the movies that come out, or would it be like, there's college movies. College movies right and left. And it's like, it's almost like our society glorifies that person who gets too messed up and does crazy shit. It's like, oh wow, like look at that person. It's like why do we kind of glorify that as being like the cool guy, let's say, or why is that the idea of a successful night? If I got too fucked up to remember, and I, took a traffic cone and threw it across the road and did this and this,
Is it the peers celebrate that? I would say parents don't celebrate that.
There's a no, I'm not talking about myself. There's like an element of shock. There's an element of shock and awe. And if I was going to relate this to something, this is going to be such a weird correlation, but stick with me here. Whenever I would eat, I would know if I made like 6 strips of bacon and 6 eggs, it's like I'm eating all of this. And like there's a element of somebody like, whoa, like that's a lot of food, dude. Like that shock and awe like would almost encourage me to keep doing it, even though it's not, I would be in stomach pain afterwards. It's not like healthy to just eat that much at one time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So there's something, I guess, about that shock and awe effect that makes you feel like empowered.
The Coney hot dog eater. I mean, who eats
what's his name?
like 90 hot dogs at one time. I mean, it's like, what's wrong with him?
I don't know. How do you
so
do that?
Why do you eat a pound of bacon?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a shock and awe effect. Or maybe wanting to be bigger, better than, I don't know. I don't know where to really
the trophy?
Go with that. Well, sure. If there's a competition, right? I mean, I'm all for
maybe taking on the world. You can take on the Coney Island hot dog winner and talk to him.
Talk to him about why he does what he does. Maybe that could be a good good transition. I think you're messing up that name, but we'll just let it go.
Okay.
We don't have to find that.
Okay.
Nathan's hot dog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but maybe we don't want to plug them. Well, whatever. They're plugged now. Oh, that's funny. Cool. Well, we went through your life. We talked about kids. Yeah, there was something else we talked about in the car that I wanted to ask you about was the balance between how much do you like, how much responsibility do you give a kid, right? Like, you remember this conversation?
I remember you were talking about that.
And it's like, I guess the premise I'm coming from is the idea that everybody has value to add to this world. I mean, I truly believe that. So if we distill it down to a smaller level where it's like, I have a kid, you know, how much responsibility do I give him in the decision-making process of anything, where we go out to eat, like what we do as a family, you know, what toys do I get him? Like, where's that balance? Because, and to this conversation started because you were commenting on how people in our, around us, or you saying people in our generation give too much responsibility to their kids to do whatever they want.
Well, I think there's an old saying too: pick your battles,
right?
With a kid. So maybe there's times when going to get ice cream for dinner is a pretty good idea, and there's times when it's not. And I think everyone has their own style and their own thought process. And there's times when you really do need to go to maybe a sit-down restaurant and you need your child to behave.
Right. Right.
And that's a struggle. I think I told you at the time, I can remember being single without kids. And when they sat a family with kids down beside me, I'd be, oh no.
Yeah.
You know, I'll never have a kid who cries in a restaurant.
Yeah.
I think every parent is like that. I mean, you don't want to.
Yeah.
Now when they cry, it's almost like I miss it, you know, because I don't have a little one to
that kind of
be embarrassed by or whatever.
Yeah. But that's interesting too, because, well, yeah, maybe we're kind of moving down a different rabbit hole. Well, right, but if a kid's at a crying level, right, I don't know that you can give them a whole lot of that responsibility. Well, maybe. Kids, yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to your brain development. A 2-year-old brain development is quite different than a 10-year-old brain development. Sure. And so I think your decision
without a doubt.
Maybe, you know, what clothes do they wear in the morning? You know, you lay out 2 and they pick which one they want, or do they just go in the drawer and pick out what they want?
Well, that's a good segue. Yeah. Where would you draw the line with clothes? Is there how do you judge that? Is there a specific age where it's like, I don't care, or like you have to pick out their clothes every single day, or is there a situation where they can pick out once they start saying, I want to pick out my clothes, you just let them?
Right. And that's
fine. What you did?
To a certain extent, but then Spirit Day would come along, and then it was Pajama Day, so you were allowed to wear your pajamas to school, which I found ridiculous. But
really,
you know, oh my word, yeah. Ask your sister sometime if you do that. So, yeah. I mean, men's pajamas are maybe gym shorts and a t-shirt, right?
That was my standard. That was my standard outfit for
Yeah.
school.
For girls, it's a little different. So, anyways, I don't mean to digress, but I think it's always that pick your battles to allow freedom and choice, because I mean it is their world too, and it doesn't matter. Your sister at the age of 2 didn't want to wear pink or anything with a bow. Well, you couldn't put it on her. I mean, she just was defiant. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she didn't wear them.
Oh, well, so then you just didn't do it, right? Why cause the fight, right?
Yeah. Well, the fight wouldn't win.
Well, but what about this? Let me even analyze how you said pick your battles. Why does there even, are there situations where there even needs to be a battle between you and your kids?
Well, if you were maybe going to a funeral and you wanted them to wear something respectful, or, you know, at the time, church, when we'd go to church, you had to. I don't think it was really had to, but you did. You dressed up. You would never have worn jeans. Nowadays, you do wear jeans to church. You wore your Sunday best to church.
Interesting.
Whenever we grew up, and now it's just a completely different. I mean, you wouldn't have worn open toe shoes. So there were probably battles there. But I mean, I don't know. I'd like to think it's part of growing up and understanding. There's times when you do things you don't want to.
Right. Well, as we talk, there's a couple other episodes on the podcast which have not been released yet, but one of them is that I no longer really subscribe to we've talked about this before, the ideology that there are things you have to do in life. There are things in life that you don't like to do that you have to do. I don't think that I don't really believe in that anymore. And the caveat to it is that there are things you need to do that are uncomfortable, or that there are uncomfortable things you need to do to get what you want, right? Like if I want to go to Brazil, I have to be anxious. I have to go through being anxious and, you know, whatnot, but to know that to get there on the other side and know that I'll grow and be better because of it. But I'm willing to do it because I know it's on the other side. And it's that caveat of I want to do it because am I losing you here a bit?
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
Let's try to rephrase this. I understand, and if you haven't listened to episode 2, it's described. I haven't released it yet. I guess I'm saying this as if it's
okay,
because when this comes out, it'll be okay. Further.
Okay, so I would have heard it.
Yeah. Well, the listeners would have heard it, but digressing.
Shock your mother. That's okay. That's all right. I can.
Well, haven't we talked about this?
Go ahead.
But that's the case in point right there. It's just that I believe that there's no such thing as needing to do things, like the idea that you have to do some things in life you don't want to do. I guess just at a fundamental level, I don't really believe that.
Okay.
That doesn't resonate with you?
Well,
and I'm trying to draw the parallel between like kids and picking your battles. Like I don't.
But I think where you are today is that you developed a core understanding of maybe what's acceptable in society, and to be respectful of others, and what, I mean, the world's only so big. I mean, you're going to share your space with other people. You don't want to be offending people, or,
well, it's kind of hard to do in today's society. Anything you do or say.
Which is a problem. I mean, you need to be respectful. I mean, look how things do change. Your great grandfather, when he went to work, he wore a hat, he wore a tie, he wore a white shirt, he wore a suit.
Yeah.
Your grandfather, when he went to work, wore a suit and tie. There was no hat. Now when your dad goes to work, it's a golf shirt and khakis. I would imagine when you went to work, it was maybe gym shorts and a t-shirt. I
didn't get to the gym shorts, but
yeah,
you could do the t-shirt. It was just, pants.
But I also know that you're in a different field. I mean, as what your profession is allows you to maybe not have people judge you on what you wear.
But isn't that the crux of this, right? Is you're worried about other people judging what you're doing, right? That's the societal impact of judgment.
maybe that's part of raising kids too. You want your kids to be well behaved because people are judging you on what type of a parent you are.
Based on how your kids are.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So do you think that there was things you made us do because of the society, because of fear of how other people would judge you?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't paddle anymore, right? I was paddled a lot as a child.
I thought Dad paddled me once or twice.
Maybe once or twice. But
it wasn't.
I don't think it would have been in public.
I don't remember being in public.
I don't think people get paddled.
But that's a good example, though, because wouldn't paddling be like coming from a place of anger and disappointment versus can't you just approach that same, take any issue that you could think about that you got paddled for? Couldn't you approach that with like a love and compassion point of view and it would solve the issue the same way, if not better?
Well, but in the heat of the moment, you've got to sometimes do a reaction to get attention, I guess, is a part of it. I mean, I was chased with my mother was an extremely wonderful woman and very gracious and kind, but I can remember her running around the house after me with a pot stick. Really? Just because I was maybe teasing my brother.
Yeah, just for teasing him.
Well, I was probably more than just teasing. I was probably being a brat. Yeah. Probably, and how do you, if a child is on, is 6 years old and out of control, you.
Well, but again, I believe that there's probably like a level of love. Do you not feel like your mom could have approached it with like well, Deb, here's what you do, here's what you don't do, here's why he's getting mad, like without just going to a place of anger?
It's a wonderful concept, and you wish that was the case, but sometimes you don't have that time to be maybe thinking exactly how can you approach it to get the situation to stop.
So would you, I guess it sounds like it's more of like an impulsive action. It's not like
the paddling.
Yeah. It's not like being present, right? It's
Probably.
Interesting. Well, I've ran out of stuff to talk about. Is there anything you want to talk about? Were there any other questions that we had that we were? I feel like we had a couple other interesting conversations.
Well, I think we always have interesting conversations, so it's always great having them. It's fun to see your child grow up and have a mind of their own. I guess maybe the great thing is I know that you are equipped to handle everything that you're going to be facing, and you're ready for your next adventure. And so for that, Pittsburgh's always your home.
Yeah. I'll find you. I mean, I got to appreciate you for, you helped me get here. I mean, I couldn't have done all this if you didn't raise me the way you did, So, thank you.
Hey, anytime.
Appreciate it.
Glad to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, before it gets too emotional. I guess that's going to kind of conclude our fourth installment of Clayton Kateri Takes on the World. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. Definitely do the sharing. I don't really care about the rest. If, my mom said something today that inspires you or kind of shows you a different way of being or different idea, or you've had these similar conversations with some of your friends, definitely, share it with them. I want to get this knowledge out there, and, there's something for everybody. What are they going to share?
What is carbon paper?
Carbon paper. You learn nothing else. Carbon copy, right? Carbon paper and carbon copy. Mom, appreciate you. Love you.
I love you.
And thanks for taking time out of your day. Excuse me. Well, at the end of it, thank you. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. And, let's grow together. So, I'll talk to you guys soon.